Recently, I opened my own Pokemon card store. Kind of. A couple weeks ago, I consigned a booth inside of a comic book shop to sell Pokemon cards locally. So far, it's been massively successful, and in this video, I'm going to explain why. First, I should explain what the consignment agreement is because some people may not know what that means. The agreement is that I'm essentially renting some space inside of the store where I pay a fixed amount per month and they receive a small percentage of the sales that I make within those four walls. Now, let's talk about the benefits of doing this as opposed to just literally selling everything that I have on eBay. First of all, I'm not personally a fan of selling raw cards on eBay. Everyone has their own interpretation of what near mint is, what excellent is. The different condition descriptions always create some sort of problem between buyer and seller. So for me personally, I would much rather sell those cards in person where people can inspect the item and then purchase the item without there being this ambiguous gray area of what the pictures are showing versus what the card could show up as. Second, I want to talk about the location of the store in which the booth is in. The location is fantastic. 1 block away is a college, and then right across the street from the comic book shop is the coffee shop that everyone goes to study and grab coffee from the university. We actually recently put a sign in the window saying that they're now carrying Pokemon cards, and a lot more people have been coming in because people are going to study at that coffee shop. They look across the street, they see the Pokemon logo, and then they go in and check out the Pokemon cards available. The next thing is that because the comic book store employees are the ones that are selling my cards, it makes the revenue that I generate and create out of this opportunity fairly passive. I go up about twice a week for about half an hour at a time to straighten things up, to refill my little glass case of singles, to move things forward in the binder, just to kind of organize and do a little maintenance of my area when I'm there. But every other time during the week, those sales are not being made by me. I don't have to be present to make those sales. The comic book store employees are the ones that are making the sales for me. So in a lot of ways, this revenue and this money that's being generated from these sales is completely passive. What's interesting too is I get to kind of peek behind the curtain of what the local community or what kind of the normal collector is out there buying. Like, is it kids that are buying? Is it adults that are buying? And later on in the video, we're going to go through everything that's sold so far and the amount of vintage, modern, Japanese, ultra modern singles, bulk, the amount of all that stuff that I've sold so far and kind of the breakdown of everything that's selling, because it's really interesting being able to peer behind the curtain of the normal collector and understand what those people are buying in these types of scenarios. And lastly, as a person who pretty much stays in his apartment all day, every day, I get to kind of go outside, I get to talk to people, I get to connect with people over Pokemon cards local to my area and meet people who are also heavily engaged and really enjoy this stuff. And on top of that, I've already gotten people talking to the comic book employees about collections that they have for sale and wanting to get my contact information to kind of facilitate a purchase or a sale through me. So those types of connections are also going to be awesome as they arise. Now, you're probably thinking up to this point that this sounds like a win-win. Like, I don't really have to do anything. I make money and that's it. I just have to pay a little bit of rent and a little bit of percentage on sales. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that because I have to have my ear to the ground on what's selling, and then I have to keep that booth stocked if I want to continue to sell things. So I've already had questions or people frustrated on the fact that I haven't, restocked the booth yet and all that stuff. And those types of issues, I'm sure, happen in, regular card store brick and mortars and stuff. Obviously, we haven't had a new set since Crown Zenith, and we're not going to have a new set for another month and a half. So it's difficult to make sure that you're constantly rotating things out, constantly making it look like you're refreshing your booth or adding more cards to it when maybe you actually aren't. But giving your customers kind of a different thing to look at every time they come in gives them that kind of illusion that you're constantly refilling it with new stuff. Whereas typically I would just buy a bunch of Japanese singles on Buy, I would send them off for grading, and I would sell stuff on eBay, and I'm still doing that, but this is a brand new avenue where I'm learning about the normal collector, the person who's, buying ultra modern singles and what Pokemon they're looking for and what cards that they really want to purchase. And so it's a whole different side of this hobby that I get to learn and experience and hopefully become successful in. And the last thing I want to say, because I know that this stuff is highly sought after, is I'm not really putting super expensive stuff in the booth, because I have some responsibility to make sure that this comic book shop, it's a fairly small shop, but it's a very cool shop, but I have to make sure that this shop doesn't get broken into, that I'm not contributing more risk to the shop than they are benefiting from my sales. So I don't put really anything in the case that's super expensive. I don't have anything over $100 there to selling, but I've still been really successful selling what I am selling. Now, I do think that I will be bringing up more high value graded cards like during different events and things that happen at the comic book shop or near the comic book shop on the main street. But for now, I'm not going to be stocking super expensive stuff in there, because the guy is super nice, and the last thing I want is for his shop to be broken into or for his shop to be negatively impacted by my presence in any way. So that's another thing that I have to think of going into this opportunity. Last but not least, let's talk about what's been selling. I'll show you the breakdown of everything that's been selling at the booth, and we'll go through and we'll figure out what people are buying right now. The only thing I stock at my booth is singles and a few graded cards. So everything that you see here is either going to be bulk from like a big bulk bin or sales of singles. I kind of have the market cornered on singles in this particular area. We do have a couple of other card shops. One of them mostly does sports and sells sealed Pokemon, and the other one also does Yu-Gi-Oh! And sports and does sealed Pokemon. So there aren't any Pokemon singles places in the area, and that's kind of the market that I want to corner with my booth. So the booth has only been open for 2 weeks. And as you can see the breakdown, there's basically 5 different areas of Pokemon product that I am selling. So modern English, vintage English, Japanese, modern bulk, and trading card accessories. So that's like the ETB sleeves. I think I have a bin of those up at the booth. So the first thing we have here is modern English singles. So that is basically anything $1 or higher is put into a binder, and people flip through the binder, and it's mostly V's and V Maxes and alternate arts and stuff like that for people to look through, and people have been purchasing those. And so far in the 2 weeks that my booth has been open, modern English singles have accounted for $147 of the total. Vintage English, which has been a lot of stuff actually from my collection that I purchased, some of the singles that I don't want to send for grading, I will put those in the actual case because typically those are $20 or higher, and those have sold $234 of the total. Japanese singles, this is mostly the rejects that come in from Japan that I don't want to send for grading. I put those in a binder and put them on the booth. Those have sold $44 out of the total. And modern bulk singles, so I have 2 bins. I have a 4-row of just commons, uncommons, and unhollow rares, and those are 4 for $1. And I have a kind of a 1-row that is reverse hollows, reverse hollow rares, and hollow rares, and those are 2 for $1. And that has accounted for $56 so far of the booth. And actually, I'm fairly surprised by that, because honestly, if I was just to try and sell the 4-row online in a flat rate box, I'd probably only get between $40 and $60 for it nowadays with the price of bulk. But people that are coming in and buying, 4-card play sets for their decks and things, that's really been pretty awesome so far, the amount that I've been able to generate from those 2 boxes. And then last but not least, we have those ETB sleeves. We've sold 4 packs of the sleeves for $16. So what I've been able to kind of conclude so far, only 2 weeks in, but conclude so far, is that modern English I sell more volume of. So more cards are being sold of modern English, but they sell at lower price points than the vintage English. So I'm making actually less money, but I'm selling more actual cards. With vintage English, it's the opposite. I'm making more money, but I'm selling less cards because the vintage English tends to be more expensive than the modern English singles that I have. So far, after 2 weeks, I've been incredibly surprised by everything that's sold. I honestly had no expectations going into this. I just kind of hoped that I would cover my rent, and I have more than covered my rent. We've done really well, and we basically haven't advertised this at all. We sent one Facebook post out on his Facebook page when I first set up the booth 2 weeks ago, and we put a sign in the window, and that's really it so far. It's definitely another avenue that I get to learn things from. I felt like I got to the point where I was just kind of coasting. I was successful doing what I was doing, and I was kind of staying in my lane, but with this, it kind of has broadened my horizon, and I get to learn even more about how people interact with this hobby and what stuff sells from kind of a smaller perspective than just, graded cards all the time. Figuring out what singles people want and helping people complete decks and things by selling them singles in the area, which really doesn't happen. If you have any suggestions about things that you think would sell well or things that I should think about putting in the booth for sale, let me know in the comments below. I'm always open to suggestions and thinking about different opportunities. I really appreciate you being here. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.